Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Health Tech Edge, where we talk about the latest topics in healthcare technology with industry experts. I'm your host, Mike Moore. Today, our guest is Nick Adriance, Director of Global Software Product Management at CenTrak. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today, Mike.
And also our panelist, as always, Raheel Redewala, Chief Strategy Officer of Productive Edge. Raheel, welcome back.
Hey, Mike. Nick, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you, Raheel.
All right, so today's discussion is an interesting one, I think. The notion of real-time location solutions in a healthcare environment. So, Nick, this is your area of expertise and what you're working on day to day. So help introduce the audience to this concept of real-time location solutions and a little bit of background and kind of how they are used in a healthcare organization today, please.
Yeah, sure. So real-time location solutions can cover a wide range of use cases, everything from asset management, staff duress, infection control, wayfinding, patient workflows. And really the technology rides on infrastructure deployed within a hospital, tagging of patients, tagging of medical equipment, staff badges as well too. And the technology can actually be used to locate staff, used to locate equipment as well too. And it's really geared towards driving operational efficiencies within a hospital. There's lots of different use cases that customers have leveraged it for, from asset loss and prevention to delivering, like I said, a staff duress message, or seeing how patient workflows can be optimized as well too. So the technology has been around for quite a while. It's really evolving now more into the BLE space, moving, Wi-Fi, still using 900 megahertz IR, things like that as well too. But hospitals have really been able to see not only savings with it, but be able to improve the overall patient experience and patient workflows as well too with it.
So in many ways, retail and RFID and this kind of concepts, like you said, it's not necessarily new and maybe not even new in the healthcare organization, but I think what the potential exists now, I'm thinking also a lot about data and AI workflows and automation and some of those kind of scenarios. I have to imagine that's inspiring a whole new wave of innovation in healthcare organizations.
Yeah, what I think's interesting about it the most is, oftentimes, customers understand, the value of being able to, say, locate something or the value of that data that they're getting. But they often find once they deploy the use cases, new use cases, frankly, things that they may have not thought about of how they can use it. Everything from tracking crash cart inventories to, how are they optimizing their patient workflows and being able to see interactions, or even in the case too, during COVID times, was contact tracing, things like that as well. Being able to see staff interaction with patients, staff interaction with medical equipment as well too. So I think once the technology is installed, it obviously can open up a lot of new opportunities as well for healthcare organizations.
I mean, Nick, I'm Nick and Mike, I'm a data nerd at heart. And I can just imagine the types of use cases that this can, enable, beyond, of course, the ones that you've mentioned, which I would say foundational. When you think about the challenges that health systems have, staff, just focusing on staff challenge, staff challenges, scheduling challenges, patient engagement challenges. Understanding and being able to use this real-time data to better forecast, whether it's staff, the skills and the staff that you would need to where patients need to be, or even planning, the right types of patients in the right types of places, to minimize, the back end sort of frustration that happens when trying to get people from one place to another. I just can think many opportunities to use this data for that purpose. So I'm assuming that your platform has a good sort of API or a way to actually consume this information in real time or after the fact?
Yeah, we absolutely do. And, like I mentioned before, we always integrate with customers. It's very uncommon for us to not go into a site and integrate. So whether that's passing just raw location data or being able to pass, say, a staff duress event, things like that as well too, to different middlewares and be able to broadcast that to larger sites. So the interoperability of our systems and the data that we produce is extremely valuable to healthcare organizations. They can typically intake that, report out on it further through a data lake or through their own internal system, like I mentioned, be able to integrate throughout it. We have some customers that have done everything from staff badge assignments, things like that, or when a staff leave, being able to automate a lot of these workflows that oftentimes were just manual in the past as well too. So more than often than not, connect to us. Whether it's a bidirectional communication or unidirectional, we pass all this location data through to these different areas and different departments within a hospital for them to leverage it and make decisions on it as well too.
What's the most common in terms of first use case? Like what makes a customer, a hospital, come to you guys in the first place looking at a solution like this? And maybe it was different over kind of COVID times and, it's evolving, but what are some initial use cases?
So oftentimes we get customers that come to us out the gate, with asset tracking. Having asset tracking once the infrastructure is really installed allows you to really expand use cases from there as well too. Oftentimes we can have customers come to us and want to do staff duress first, say in their emergency department. But same thing, you're able to really grow and expand the use cases once you're able to prove it out using the same type of infrastructure. So it really allows them to start to broaden when they say, hey, okay, I can see the value of this now for asset prevention. I can see the value of this now for, hey, it's a life safety system, but then really broaden out from there to infection control, environmental monitoring, patient workflows as well too. So once it's really installed and understood and the value is proven and seen, it can be really limitless from there as well too about how it's applied in different areas throughout the hospital.
And the duress scenario, can you just talk and describe for people what that means? And I'm guessing that it's some sort of you've got a button press on the badge or something that signals that there's an emergency and maybe security needs to respond. Is that typical?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, we're able to locate somebody down to a room level, bedside as well too. So it's essentially a silent alarm, a button press that relays out to different workstations, whether it's on the specific floor or to a central security area as well too. It can also be broadcast out to mobile devices, other middlewares as well too, to notify people of a duress event that's occurring. So really the goal of it, right, is a silent alarm, but being able to get that clinical team member, somebody to respond to them as fast as possible to de-escalate a situation or ensure their safety as well.
Nick, I'm curious, staying on the topic of emergency, when you think about broader emergency response within health systems, I'm curious as to the learnings that you may have seen when things like COVID happened and, a response to that was needed, that really needed to mobilize people across the location. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the things that you all noticed and how your solution was used at that time?
Yeah. I think we hit on it a little bit earlier. The biggest one I think was contact tracing, being able to see all those different interactions. Obviously being able to know where people were in a stressful time like that as well too. So being able to understand, are we staffed appropriately in our ED? Are we staffed appropriately in different floors as well too, depending on the patient volumes that were coming in? But how do you, not only locate the equipment that you need to treat all of these folks as well too, but then being able to ensure that those interactions between patient staff or staff members and equipment and vice versa, was equally important, I think, during the COVID times as well too. But then how do you report out on that as well too, making sure that, safety for patients, safety for staff is being taken paramount in a situation like that as well too, which was, obviously a very unique time in the world.
Right. What from a getting started perspective, what infrastructure does a health system or large hospital system need to have already in place to be able to start quickly with a platform like this?
Yeah, I think really one of the things they have is obviously common infrastructure, cable drops, things like that, Wi-Fi infrastructure, access points, things of that nature, which most hospitals are already equipped with. There is some level of installation that has to be done. So oftentimes it's capital investment, maybe in terms of an infrastructure to be able to set up and start doing real-time location systems. But really, we work closely with not only, IT networks, but also clinicians, those types of staff as well, too, to make sure that, even once the infrastructure is deployed, doing the validation, doing the testing, make sure that they're getting the value out of the system that they expected overall.
Mm-hmm. I imagine I mean, I know from working with many health systems, one of the challenges, of course, always is Wi-Fi, right? I mean, guests want access to Wi-Fi, patients want access to Wi-Fi. Of course, all systems network and connectivity is critically important. Um, and I'm assuming there are other ways for your asset trackers to be utilizing network bandwidth outside of Wi-Fi. And just curious, where's the industry headed there?
The industry is really moving towards more of a BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy type of deployments. So that's using, say, a Cisco access point to be able to do tag locations or proximity as well too. That's really where it's starting to shift everything from staff badges to asset tags, but also being able to leverage, customer sites where we already installed, where you have a 900 megahertz deployment, really being able to switch almost between those two types of solutions. So BLE and multi-mode, but more and more of the industry is moving towards that BLE. It's much more low cost, lower infrastructure up front. Oftentimes hospitals already have it installed as well too. So you're able to ride off of that network as well within the hospital. So that's really, how do you operationalize RTLS, I think, is a big question in all of this, as opposed to what it's been historically of a large upfront capital investment. How do you make it more or less a critical business system that hospitals just expect to use? It's part of their day-to-day operations, and they have the buy-in from their staff to leverage the technology.
Are your trackers easily compatible with whatever the options that? So, for example, if there's Wi-Fi prevalent and there's not a lot of impact on the Wi-Fi potentially perceived or perception is that we have enough coverage. Maybe I'll just use Wi-Fi to get started quickly. Then, if BLE becomes an option, are your trackers readily able to transition, or do you need different trackers for different connectivity options?
Yeah, so we're moving towards having a BLE staff badge, moving towards BLE asset tags as well too. So in most cases, the infrastructure is compatible. Obviously, Cisco, Aruba, Juniper, the big players out there as well too. There may be some level of an upgrade, something like that has to occur. But for the most part, out of the box, our devices are all readily available. Once you go deploy at a new hospital, or say a hospital was upgrading their net infrastructure, we're able to work with them in that capacity as well.
How quickly have you seen ROI achieved for our health systems and deployed this technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have one customer in Texas specifically has over 25,000 assets tagged, something like that. Now it's quite a huge volume. I think their biggest thing is they've been able to reduce. One of the things is their rental footprint. So as you can imagine, hospitals have lots of rentals that exist out there. They can be forgotten, they can't be located, the rental bills just keep running. They've been able to really start to save money on those rentals overall. But then also in terms of how they manage inventory, they've been able to deploy RTLS to manage their inventory counts, how they do crash cart management, things like that. So they've been able to, then outside of just pure asset loss prevention, they've really been able to, like I alluded to earlier in the conversation, like how do they find use cases that maybe we hadn't thought of first to be able to see that ROI long-term as well too. So it became more than just locating something or allowing a nurse to locate a piece of equipment. They really started to utilize it to drive business value overall. And so really, I think the deployment to the time customers can really see ROI, is within a year, 1 to 2 years, obviously, to pay back the investment, depending on the size and scope. But I think the value in, again, is they start uncovering things they may have not thought about that the technology can be used for.
I have to imagine that this is something where, as this technology is introduced in a hospital, that there is potentially some staff objections to kind of the, let me get this straight, Nick, you're going to tag me and follow me around all day on my shift, right?
Sure.
Like maybe not popular. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about how both you and also some of your customers have overcome some of that objection around the big brother notion of this tracking.
I think one of the biggest things is obviously having the buy-in up front. It's much more than just, an IT department being involved. It's really having clinicians, leaders involved too, to understand how the technology is going to be applied. I think the biggest successful deployments we've seen is when customers have that up front. If they're deploying, let's use, again, staff duress as an example, helping them understand, this is being deployed to help keep you safe, but emergency response is only one button press away. We're also going to help you locate equipment, make sure your patients are doing well. It really helps hospitals, I think, drive engagement from that standpoint if they're deploying a system, and getting that buy-in up front. So there's certainly always those objections as far as, hey, you're going to track and monitor my every whereabout, but I think it's critical for healthcare organizations that when they go into is they engage their clinicians, their leadership, to get the input about how it's going to be used, why they're looking at it as an investment, and how it can hopefully make clinicians' lives, patients' lives, experience overall much better as they go forward as well too. So there's definitely objections to overcome, but I feel like that buy-in up front is equally important.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about the stories that my wife told me. She's a registered nurse. Her first job out of nursing school was at Mass General Hospital here in the Boston area. And, she was the first new nurse that had been hired on that floor in 10 years, is at least what they had told her. And so every shift she'd come on, she would end up with anywhere, kind of 8 to 10 patients, whereas the other nurses had 4. And then, of course, some of her patients would have precautions, so she would have to gown up, mask up, all these things. This is almost 30 years ago at this point, right? So it's a lot. Now you could actually have more than just, so she did complain, which she didn't do. She just kind of kept her head down and worked. But, you could see those kind of things, like how many patient rooms on average is a nurse going into during a shift? How long does it take, in the preparation, right? You can kind of do some calculations around time and care and those kind of things. I think the safety piece makes a lot of sense too, for staff, knowing that they have some support that's just a button push away, and kind of overcoming it. And then the other piece is just around that equipment availability, right? Like they're probably never, whatever piece of equipment it is, they probably never seem like they have enough of them on that floor. And knowing where it is, but also tracking some of the utilization of specific pieces of equipment, and maybe looking at how you redistribute those around the hospital. Like maybe we don't need to buy more of those. We just need to redistribute our existing inventory to the places of need, because this, particular floor needs it more in the post-op surgical or whatever the scenario might be, more than something in geriatric care or whatever it is, right? So I'm sure all of that stuff gets on the table. Now that you've got all this data, it's kind of the exciting part is, where do you go with it, and what kind of use cases can you develop next?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all very standard RTLS type of tracking and monitoring for asset management, especially. I mean, another idea too is, nurse call automation, obviously. So nurses are going in and out of rooms, logging their time automatically. All that location data can be leveraged to essentially automate all of that too. So nurses aren't having to plug in time spent doing all the types of things that they normally would do day to day. It's just, they can focus on patient care.
Yeah, absolutely. So Raheel, this all makes me think about, we spent a lot of time obviously talking about AI, right? Artificial intelligence is on everyone's mind, just overall across industries, but then especially in healthcare. Now look at this as a source of data and the real-time nature of it, and thinking about all the things that you could do in an AI model, pulling this data together, both for real-time as well as kind of future and predicting next, best actions, all these kind of things. What are your thoughts about that, and kind of where the innovation could go with this information?
Yeah, this information is really, really important. I think, as we were discussing a little bit earlier, I think that forecasting and prediction are going to be really important use cases. So whether it is around, analyzing movement patterns to predict and prevent incidents, patient safety, staffing and staffing needs, environmental monitoring, patient flow, and where the resources need to be. These are incredibly important use cases, and AI can absolutely benefit from having access to this data to then drive these predictions, and then make that part of the workflow as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of use cases here beyond the core traditional ones that Nick talked about, right? That we can, certainly I see working and speaking to clients, our clients, is incredible need for these things. So,
yeah, and I think even putting the conversational AI on the front end of it, instead of having to go to a system, and maybe this is on the product roadmap, Nick, of what you guys are planning for your solution, but not having to go to an interface and using kind of a database query lookup kind of thing, but simply being able to go to a console and say, where is the closest crash cart? Obviously, crash carts would be the worst example to use, right? Because that should be known and there shouldn't be a question because of the critical nature of those when they are needed. But, where is the closest whatever? And being able to ask that and have the system be aware of it, but ask it in a natural language kind of format, I would think would be pretty useful for staff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reporting nature of all this, how AI integrates to that, machine learning, all those buzzwords that we've heard out there is critical. I mean, that's really where a lot of the value comes from as well, too, within these products is not only the location services data, but how are you taking all of that, aggregating into a dashboard view, reports for nurses, managers, leadership as well, to help them make decisions using this information. So AI is certainly a roadmap item for us. How does it layer in? What do our customers want to see with it? How can they use it to make decisions? It's going to be equally important down the road.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, Nick, to share this information with us and open some eyes to the possibilities here. I think it's an exciting area of technology to explore and consider. It's well tested, right? We established it's kind of been around for a while. The use cases are evolving in the healthcare setting. Now you combine it with the latest and what's happening in artificial intelligence, and really it's exciting where things go. So thanks for joining us and sharing with us about this real-time location solution.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike and Raheel. It was great to speak with you both.
Same.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Health Tech Edge. We'll be back next time with another episode talking about some leading technology here in the health tech space. Thanks everybody for joining.